Okay, so also welcome from my side. I very much welcome you, the UI5 community, to be here at the UI5con from SAP, as Frederick told you. And yeah, I'm now looking at this very big audience, and I remember 1 year back we had the first UI5con ever in Frankfurt, hosted by AOK Systems, and I had the honor to be the first speaker of the first UI5con. And I really have to tell you, this event, this day, I remembered it for quite some time. I really enjoyed this event. It was driven by the community, by the UI5 community, for the community, with some people from SAP. And now it's bigger, but still, I really ask you to have the same spirit, to have the same discussions during the day, the same openness. Although it's all bigger, it shouldn't be like a standard SAP event. It should still be the UI5con from you, for you. Please contribute and help to make this happen. Good. Now I have to find the proper equipment for the next slide. So I was talking about the community and start with this disclaimer. And now please all read it carefully so that I'm allowed to continue. Not. I was expecting that. So developers are a bit lazy and maybe a bit sluggish if it comes to reading the documentation. And therefore, I was thinking about, okay, what is somehow these days also inspired by Twitter? What is the abbreviation of this slide? The abbreviation is all what I'm now telling you in the next 40 minutes could be fake news. That is somehow exactly in a few words what you see here. anyhow, you know me, you know the UI5 team, and let's say we do everything like in the past, and that's my promise and the promise of the teams and our really skilled people which you can also meet today and take this opportunity, that we make happen what we are talking about. That's our promise. And now let's start with an example that is, let's say, proves what I'm telling you, but maybe not in the most optimal way. We had with Röll a talk at Tech at Barcelona, I think, where there was a strong pull in the community to get finally a UI5 SDK that you can download, install in a very comfortable way. So, it took us some time. I think on Monday we have released it. We got quite negative feedback from some of you that it was only the version 1.38. So this happened by accident, and the communication and this stuff happened by accident. The idea was to present it today, and what you see here is a screenshot from our cloud staging area that will be public the 6th of July. And as you can see, you find the version 1.46, 1.44, and 1.38. So from, let's say, July 6th, we will be set and exactly deliver as we promised. So, I have to admit it was a bit slow, but it was a process question, and that, and not a question of our, let's say, willingness to deliver, and also definitely not the skills of the team. So let's come to the first slide. I would like to start with the market situation, and looking into the market situation, what are the current releases that are out, because we refer that, Frederick and myself, in the demos quite some time, so that you have an kind of an overview. So currently we have, what you can see here, these cogwheels. They have a color code. The yellow-orange ones are our maintenance releases that have a 2 years of maintenance window, and the bluish one are the ones that are maintained until the next bluish one is released. So we have currently out 1.28, but be careful, if you use it, it reaches soon the end of maintenance, and we ask you then to go to one of the next stable releases, that is 1.38 and 1.44. As a quick overview, 1.38 is somehow the technically advanced big brother of 1.28. It's much better, some new features, higher quality, better performance. So completely, let's say, big brother of 1.28 is the right term, and similar to that one. So this is a good let's say, point to go to if you don't want too many changes. However, with 1.44, we come up with a, let's say, brand new Fiori design that we really recommend you to use, but the adoption of it also has some costs and has a certain price. And therefore, really also recommended to embrace 1.44, Fiori 2.0. Frederick will show more about that later. And still, if you go there, please read the installation guides to understand what you have to expect so that you are prepared how to embrace it. It's not too big, but you should read the documentation up front, as said, and then you are well prepared. So on Cloud Platform, 1.46 is currently released. Internally from our development teams, we have finalized 1.48. That means our development teams started to work on 1.50, that you understand the mechanics. And you see the yellow here from the next cogwheel. So 1.52 will then be the next stable release that we are about to ship. Now, market situation, and let's start what also Frederick just mentioned from the internal perspective. So UI5 is the strategic UI technology of SAP. The digital core, S4, HANA, the major products are built with UI5. Also with the new acquisitions from the past, SuccessFactors, they released UI5 based application products now. So we are definitely on a good direction. That means from the strategic importance, we are number one. But I'm also looking into, let's say, our endurance to be and stay and keep the number one. And I have to admit, we are only the second place. If I'm honest, SAP GUI and Dynpro is the first place towards endurance. And the bad thing is they have a head start of 25 years, so it will be tough for us. But as Frederick indicated, we have to do certain things that will bring us in a position to get there and to go on with evolution and renovation. But we have that later. Let's now look into the outside view. So I do not have all numbers, and it's also always hard to get that. It's not SPs, whatever, but what we can tell and know somehow that 3,250 customers are installing our patches. It's also, if you can see that, plus 7% since January. No, not such a big growth. And what I really like this number, if you now already look into our SAP Cloud Platform, our CDN Akamai offerings, we have roughly 40,000 people per day who launch UI5 from there. And this is really a plus 100% since January. So we can obviously move on like that. That would be nice. So let's go to the next one. So the point is, we have in the past that we now have reached our current state. We must have done a lot of things right. And I now talk about the strategy, and I start with the part one, and that is somehow looking at what we have done right and what we want to continue to do right. Therefore, I call it the constant key pillars of our strategy. So our goal is to be the best UI technology for enterprise-grade applications in the SAP ecosystem. That means we want to have all these qualities that you need for building enterprise applications. Let's say it's ready for mass data. It has, let's say, a lot of really good controls, that has a lot of interaction, that has keyboard navigation, number formatting, all what you know, this kind of enterprise qualities, product standards, security, accessibility, all what you see. Here we have big assets, and we want to continue to have it. One important thing is, in that area, we have to build applications at SAP fast. When we build fast, we have many applications. We have many applications in maintenance, and we have many applications in the overall life cycle. And if something happens like a Fiori 2.0 new design, we have to take all these applications with us. Therefore, one key aspect of UI5 is that we have a really efficient way, a declarative way, an annotation-driven way now of developing. We have a lot of building blocks, reusable building blocks, and we are ready for central changes via these building blocks and Fiori elements. And that is something that we want to stick to. Clearly, we want to stick to. And if I look into the community, this smart control, smart template approach is not yet so much on your place, and we have to change this because we really made excellent experience at SAP. The other point is SAP delivers application, obviously, and they never fit completely what the customer needs and wants. Therefore, we have somehow invested into, we call it UI flexibility, in, let's say, 3 flavors. You can do runtime or the design time adaptation, means adopting an application in the web ID without doing modification. The key user can do the same thing, then it's runtime adaptation, and the end user can do it as well, then it's personalization. So very important, and we make big step forward. So we'll have a demo later on, and also this will be still on our agenda. And obviously the integration story that if you build applications with UI5, they have automatically, more or less, can be integrated into the Fiori launchpad or into the SAP portals that we have around. So what does this strategy, the part that we did right, mean with regard to new features that we are or have delivered and will deliver? I already talked quickly about Fiori 2.0. I think, Frederick, you can directly switch, give you one thing to explain the screenshots quickly, and then you can open the demo. So we have somehow 2 screenshots. We have Fiori 2.0 comes with 2 themes, the dark flavor that you see in this screenshot and the light flavor. And what is important, you have somehow the current screen here, and then it is enhanced on the left-hand side by viewports, where usually the me area can be found, where you can do, let's say, settings or customizations of the user. On the right-hand side, in most cases, there's the notification area that brings up notifications, but I think better than talking is showing Frederick.
Exactly. Thank you, Stefan. Can we turn the mic on? Okay. Okay, so thanks. Yeah, let's go straight into the system. I hope that I can get this switch done quickly. Okay, here we go. Okay, so what you see here is a new launchpad, right? So this is Fiori 2.0 in action. And you see certain things have changed. The first thing that's noticeable, I guess, right away is the new theme. As Stefan already mentioned, SAP Belize, right? And this was also a pretty big challenge for the development teams to make this happen, because now you have one theme that's sort of running in 2 different flavors. The end user can, of course, switch this around, and this brings me also to one of the key concepts in this Fiori 2.0 launchpad. You have viewports to the right and to the left of the main screen, so this is new. This was not there before. You can reach the so-called me area on the left-hand side by clicking on the avatar icon, basically on the left, and this brings in, let's say, information and possible actions related to the user. So you have recent activities here, you have the app finder, you have your settings. For example, you could from here switch the appearance of this launchpad into the light flavor of the SAP Belize theme. Stefan also mentioned notifications. So we do have on the right-hand side also a new section. This section can either be expanded by using this button right here. In this case, I don't have any in this particular system. The notifications are also, let's say, showing when you're not completely expanding the screen yet. So this is some of the things. Stefan also mentioned that we, of course, have to make sure and somehow safeguard that the investments that are already happening or have happened into application code remain protected, right? So we work quite hard in integrating applications in a way that they now fit into the new design pattern, right? Previously, applications would run sort of in a almost box, let's say, inside of the launchpad. And there's a new sort of concept. So let's go ahead and take one of these applications. And you notice that on the top of the screen, you have this sort of new navigation element, right? So here you can, first of all, see the title of the application that has moved all the way into the header of the launchpad. And you have access to quick navigations, like going back one step to the home. If you drill down into an application, you can go step by step back, so there's a multi-level navigation showing as well. The integration of the header into this Launchpad header, let's say, is done automatically. So we build sort of an adapter that takes your application and automatically integrates it into the new launchpad. So this was important. Let's go ahead and show you this real quick. If I navigate into a detail page, for example, then you will see that the navigation in the top of the screen looks a little bit different. Yeah? So here I now see two steps to, for example, go back to the launchpad. Okay, so I think these are some of the key aspects on the top right. There's search, there's the Copilot integration. This demo alone would take, I think, a little bit longer than we have today, but also a very interesting aspect, a digital assistant, let's say, for the enterprise that's available right from the launchpad as well. You can interact with it, you can ask it questions about applications and so on, but check out what's already available online. Okay, so I think we can probably go to either the next slide or directly cover some of the concepts.
Maybe show some more demos on the new controls.
Exactly. So there are a couple of new controls. Let me quickly show you the slides. There we go. So there are a couple of new controls in UI5 1.46. There are things like an avatar control, which was highly demanded by many people. So you can now place a picture of a product or of a person or initials or an icon into different shapes. Yeah, for example, to be used in what you saw in the launchpad up in the top left. There are more complex controls. Some of the applications I already had up on screen, the Fiori 2.0 based applications, have completely new, let's say, floor plans and patterns that were implemented. And a lot of this comes, let's say, out of the box as bigger UI5 controls, really. So we'll have a look at the flexible column layout, semantic page, and see how they help to, let's say, bring the Fiori 2.0 designs to life. So if I go back into the application you had seen before, there's something to note. Like, for example, here, this application has this dynamic sort of header. It's a header that can contain a filter bar and its settings. You can scroll down on this page and the header will sort of move up, hide, and still reveal the details, the settings behind this particular section. Yeah? So that's pretty useful. Obviously, if this is something that the user doesn't like, you can also go ahead and pin this section. In this case, the scrolling would only take place in the lower part of the screen. This looks simple, and this was really complicated. So we have some people in the room that worked on it, so they know what I mean. Okay, so this is one of the things. And let's go to the flexible column layout, which also is, let's say, a control with a high amount of complexity, but gives you some pretty neat results. So in here, I have, let's say, a demo page. You see a list. So far, not very exciting, but you can go ahead and select one of the entries. And this will transform into a sort of a master detailed display of data. You know this from previous applications, but this particular page now has been created using the flexible column layout, which has some additional features which are nice and interesting to see. For example, you now have the possibility to take the screen and adapt it to your needs. So if the master list is too narrow, doesn't show enough detail, you can actually go ahead and make that the larger part of the screen while keeping the detail part small, which is a pretty nice UX improvement. If there's an additional detail to be shown for the detail screen, you can actually do a split in 3, right? So in this case, still, you can go ahead and play with the different areas. You can enter full screen mode on a particular section, close the section, and it's all integrated with routing. So you can actually use browser back to step back as you step forward through all of these UI changes. Okay. Do we miss anything? I think that's on this slide basically all. So let's go back to our deck. There are a couple of new controls as well in 1.48. There are some new charts. There's a PDF viewer, and the reason for this is interesting because you could obviously already click on a link and see the PDF, for example, on your desktop. On mobile devices, this causes some issues because you actually leave the current application, and then it's kind of sometimes hard to go back to where you came from. So this control actually makes it possible because it opens up the same native display of PDFs that you know from a browser, but sort of inside a pop-up. Yeah? So you don't leave the current application. You can still do all the things you know, like printing and scrolling and these sort of things. There are a few updates in this release as well. For example, rows can now have highlights to indicate the status of a certain row, for example, and several, let's say, smaller enhancements. Something maybe to note is that the rich text editor, which is a pretty important control actually, has now finally made it into the Fiori space, let's say. So this is now available in combination with sub-M controls, which makes it very valuable, I think, as an addition to applications that need that sort of rich text editing capabilities, while previously it was only compatible, let's say, with commons controls. All right, then let's go back to this slide. Yeah. Okay, so right here. Maybe Stefan. Yeah.
Okay, no. Let's come to what I meant already with the runtime UI adaptation or UI flexibility. That is one of the ways how customers, and especially the key user person at a customer, can adapt applications delivered by SAP. So overall, I hope you have heard about UI flexibility. It's definitely a topic for a complete session. But the principle is that we have layered repository. Layered repository is layered in the sense that we have a layer for SAP, we have a layer for partners, for industries, for customers, and developer at customer, and also, let's say, key users, end users. And the idea is that basically we store changes to the application as semantic change in such a layer in which it was done. That means you can adapt the application. So Frederick will quickly then also show how, so rearranging fields, hiding fields, adding fields, and these changes are stored as data. That means if the application is changed by SAP, the semantic change has somehow relies on stable IDs and stable anchors, and if such an anchor is still in place, the change can afterwards be applied. This also can work if SAP decides to replace a control by something else. Therefore, we use semantic changes that express the semantic of a change, and it's not just a property change in a control, because if we change the control, such a change would be lost or can no longer be applied. That's the reason why we go for the semantic changes. Somehow, that's what the basics that you have to understand, but now I think it's enough talking again, and Frederick, please.
Okay, so sorry for the dynamic slide. Okay, so what you see here is a master detail application with, on the right-hand side, some fields. And the idea would be, as Stefan lined out, that this application somehow needs to be adapted to the needs of a particular customer, for example. And so let me actually exit out because I can then show you how to get into this mode of adapting the UI, right? So on the top left, there's the avatar as I showed before for the me section. And if the logged on user has the right roles and the right authorizations, then this button will appear, right? So there's adapt UI. And so you start this from a running application, really, right? So you can click on adapt UI. This application now offers additional functionality. So on top of the normal fields, you'll see there are highlightings that indicate which fields can receive a particular operation. So you can go ahead and say average rating is something that's not of interest to me. You can simply go ahead and remove such a field. As Stefan has described, you can go ahead and rearrange certain fields. So I could take the web address, move it up under SAP. I can do something, whether it makes sense or not, and say these two fields, just combine them, right? You can change a label in place, just like this. Okay, so real simple adaptations to a large and growing number of controls these days. So We've seen the rearrangement of fields. What we haven't seen yet is that you can also go ahead and add certain fields. For example, for the supplier. In this case, we already added almost all the fields. The supplier ID, I think, is still available, so I can go ahead and add this one. It's possible to change the sections on this page, so I can move them up and down, and I can also add new sections. So there's one more section available, technical data. So if I move this in, then I can see the technical data below. I could, change the order and so on. So you get the point, right? It's about making all of these changes, and as Stefan mentioned, it's pretty simple. It gets stored in a safe and compatible way, and you now have the option to either obviously step back through the changes, reset them, or publish them. And publish them ultimately would then mean, depending on your system landscape, a transport to actually reach the systems where you need this change. Okay.
Good. Then let's move forward. We have hint for us internally. I think we have to speed up a bit. I think maybe directly stick here with the demo. I think one really important step that we also want to announce today, we have also, from the very old days, our DemoKit looks very much the same. Now we finally managed to invest, to get the time to come up with the new DemoKit, new SDK. You can see screenshots here, but I think best is if Frederick directly shows it. And let's say afterwards, while you switch to the new DemoKit, there's a second topic. As we have to speed up a bit, I directly take that one. We also worked on something that we call support assistance. So internally from SAP, we figured out that we get a lot of tickets, CSN tickets, BCP tickets with consulting. And therefore we said, okay, this binds our resources, that prevents us from doing new features like the DemoKits. That means we have to invest. So we have invested in a tool that we call Support Assistant that comes along with a rule set that our developers can define and you can extend of things that we believe a UI5 application should adhere to. And that means you start the Support Assistant with your application, and it directly shows you the violations, what we think is wrong in your application, with then links to the documentation and this pretty new DemoKit, and really advise how to help, how to get it fixed. And now that we have enough time for the evolution, what is really important, maybe let's do this part quick, as you have really the option to to test this. It's in the test lab downstairs. Maybe Frederick, you can.
Okay, great. So I'll try to speed up as much as I can. So there are a couple of things in the new DemoKit. First of all, obviously, I don't know what you think, but I think it looks really nice. It's brand new. This is completely built with UI5. It's responsive, runs on all devices. So it should have always been like this, but we finally got around to actually fixing this up. So the DemoKit now is in great shape. This is actually on OpenUI5 Nightly, so you can check it out. It's there. And there are a couple of things that are notable, I think. For example, we did get some feedback on the DemoKit's weaknesses, let's say. So let's go to the first option right here. There's the documentation section, which has been reworked a little bit. So on the right-hand side, you see these easy entry points. The left is still the same, let's say, documentation structure that you know. Yeah, but filtering works on top of this tree. And also there's a couple of things on the top right-hand side which are interesting to note. For example, if you need information on a particular control, you can go ahead and do a search. And this search has now let's say the added feature that you can finally go and differentiate between API reference, documentation, or samples, right? And one thing that you can see from here is if I go to sap.m.button now, I go to a sample. A sample previously was the explored application, right? That's now integrated in the tool, which gives us a bit of a nicer cross-link capability. Because if you look at the sample page now, you see a link to the API reference, right? There's still the typical behavior that you know. You can look at the sample, you can look at the source code, you can download the source code, and so on. But when you're on a sample, you have a cross-navigation back into the API reference, and vice versa, right? So if you are on a particular API reference, there will be the link to the control samples right up here, which I think also makes navigating all of the content much smoother. Yeah, so explored basically is now integrated. That's important. There is, let's say, also an interesting feature which we'd like you to use. It's this feedback channel up here. So you can give us feedback you can include, if you keep this checkbox set, the current page, and then give us feedback on something that is wrong or where you think it needs enhancement. So this is nice, and this will then be sent to us, and we can go ahead and improve the demo kit. So last but not least, let's look at the demo apps. That's also something quite nice in here. The demo applications used to be available and you could look at them, but there was no simple way to download them, right? And this was something that many people had asked for. And so we now have the option to go ahead and download all of them one by one, or and then browse the source code, upload it into the IDE of your choice, and really get started quickly. So it's a small, but it's a really important, I think, addition. You can see all of the sample applications in here and start them, obviously. So the shopping cart would be one to start, and I'll use this one to explain what Stefan mentioned, the support assistant. So the support assistant is easily reachable with for some of you, well-known keyboard shortcut of Control, Alt, Shift, and P. You know the insiders when they do this, automatically. So when this technical information dialog comes up, there's now the possibility to activate the support assistant, right? So I'm just doing this on one of these applications. And what happens is that we sort of load the support assistant in addition to the current application. I'll have to, let's say, open up this view. And what you can see now is that you have a built-in list of controls that relate to the current application, right? So in this application, there are certain checks that came from the core library. There are certain checks that come from SAP.m, from layout and so on. And I can go ahead and say, okay, I want to execute all of the rules and analyze my current application. So what we now do is we execute the runtime of UI5, not the design time, not the source code, but what actually was created out of it after you manipulated this and so on. And we have now clustered this into different severities and categories, so you can browse for things like accessibility violations, performance violations, which is really nice for apps where you do not even know that you're not in line with the latest guidelines, let's say. So this is an application that has already been improved. We still have issues, and you can look at the severity. For example, there are some low issues like there's CSS modification for a list of controls. That means custom CSS was added on top, which in theory presents something like a risk. We could change the HTML structure. On the right-hand side, you see the XML structure of the page. And if you scroll down and notice such a marked line, you can directly click on the control and get a listing of all of the issues that relate to this particular control. So I think this is a really, really nice tool. It can be enhanced with your own rules, as Stefan said. So this is something where you could also say, if you have typical issues in code quality or so, you could create such a rule and then run it on your applications, and thus have a simple automated way to do this. What I don't want to miss, because it's important, is when you are on such an issue and you see the details in the center of the screen, we do explain to you what the issue is, but we directly link you as well to, for example, the API reference for this form, where you might find additional information or particular help pages that explain what the technical issue actually is. Right, so I think this is a great addition and really valuable. We hope that you use it and give us feedback on this tool as well. Hopefully contribute to the rules and so on. This is hopefully making UI5 much, much better in the future. Thanks.
Okay. There's one session in the room B, I'd say at 1:30. Okay, there's one dedicated session at 1:30, room B, if you want to attend it and get more information. Now, UI5 product strategy part 2. It's now the things that we want to focus more in the future, and it's like in our demo today that you doing the stuff that you always do, even miss a bit of the time of the new stuff, but we somehow will hopefully get it right. So what do we have to emphasize newly? So we have and we want to focus on the SAP Cloud Platform to enable the digital innovation best. I think best is missing on the slide. So we want to go into the cloud. We obviously offer and start with small steps. One was already mentioned, that we have now the UI5 via a content distribution network, Akamai, available. And for most of you, for most of the on-premise customer, this would be much better than having the UI5 installed in your local ABAP system. For most of the people that do not directly sit on a data center, Akamai with its 260,000 access points around the globe is by far faster, much faster. If you want to install an SP, these huge MIME files are no longer there. The SP installs quickly, the downtime is shorter. If you install a node, a patch from UI5, it's a one-liner pointing to a different URL in the cloud and no longer whatever megabyte MIME repository. I think this is, for instance, a small step that is then really important and shows that most of the customers will benefit in doing that. Then, obviously, you can do other things. We will talk about UI evolution, and we will talk about build technology, optimization technologies for UI5 application. So here we plan build services, build packs that you can take your source code, give it to the cloud platform, and the cloud platform really gives you an optimized UI5 package that works best. And here we can go further. You can, let's say, add additional services, get information about the user, like a me service or usage statistics. Having the usage statistics from many users, if a new user comes, you can already recommend him something that you have learned from the other users in the sense of the machine learning. So there's a huge range of things that we can imagine and do. But let's say the precondition is the step into the cloud where we have all these offerings. However, we would, and we want not, as UI5 does all the time, let the current users, the on-premise customers, behind. Therefore, we also have a concept, it's technically called a runtime agent, so that such an optimized UI5 package, including the Fiori launchpad configuration, can think of that as a zip file, take the zip file, put it into an on-premise system. Then in the on-premise system, you have a very lightweight runtime that works against the zip file and then really shows the highly optimized applications that were built in the cloud, also on your on-premise system, so they also benefit from there. Not as easy as in the cloud, you have to upload, download and this stuff, but you also get these benefits with your current code base that you are working on. And now, Frederick also mentioned this, we have to foster the UI5 evolution. So we started UI5 9 years back, and we never did a fundamental change to it. And now, driven by what we see here in the requirements towards the cloud platform. What we know, also I have to admit that, with the performance of UI5, especially on Android mobile devices, where we are not really that good, even with the latest devices. That means this heavyweight, the size, the performance is not really good, and also your feedback, all your feedback, as Frederick mentioned, that you ask us for a more comprehensive renewal. So we really invest into UI5 evolution, we modularize the complete UI5, we come to a new component loading system, we introduce more build capabilities, we optimize per applications. So there are a lot of things that I will talk later about, and we take this very serious. And also in the next session from Peter Music in this room, I can recommend. Here Peter will explain even more details than Frederick later on. And last but not least, I already talked about our really good experience with the smart approach, with the smart controls, the Fiori elements. And here we want to do more. We do renovate also this declarative programming approach. We introduce metadata-driven controls to make these steps much easier, and therefore hope that we get you into smart world, that you also benefit from these complete investments. I'll come to that then in more details on one of the next slides. So what is then the outlook? What are we doing concretely in this regard? I have talked about the first one already, that we ask you to load quasi UI5 in the future from Akamai. I also want to announce it legally. We want to remove the ABAP MIMEs from our default SPs in a year from now. That means if you then install UI5 SPs, you automatically point to the cloud. However, we know that some customers do not like that, so we will then have a patch that gets the UI5 file back. But we assume that the majority of you will accept this and will realize how much easier it is. So we will offer both, but really we hope that you follow us and also appreciate these advantages regarding the installation times, the downtimes, the cost of ownership that you have. I talked about the cloud platform. I talked about build capabilities, easy deployment capabilities, integration capabilities. You have the launchpad around, you have, let's say, an app registry around, you have an app index service around that takes care of all the app descriptors. UI5 flexibility will work out of the box. And also one sample that we are going to offer is that we want to go for Excel export that considers more of the details that you currently have on your screen. That means the selections, the sorting, the filtering, the reorderings. So with that, we want to be better, and it's also one basic principle of our architecture. It's written as for Node.js, so we can execute it on the server, but also we can execute in a web worker if the corresponding browser supports that. So these are examples of our direction into the cloud direction. Now this new declarative approach, the metadata-driven controls. So first and foremost, they will come on top of OData V4. Not sure whether you know that, but OData V4 compared to OData V4 has significant advantages. You can load the metadata documents later. It's a much better JSON-based format that is performance optimized, much smaller. We have a more advanced query capabilities. So a lot of advantages that come on top of OData V4. However, we have now also learned and have metadata connectors and are flexible. So if it's not OData, it could be something else. And as we talk about a community event today, it could also be a community contribution to build such adapters for any REST protocol that we might want. So we are currently not doing it, I have to admit it, but at least we lay the foundation and then we see. But if someone is interested, obviously, it would be a nice and well-appreciated contribution. Overall, we are after, let's say, having a new way of doing composite controls, fragment controls, however we will call them finally. And the key is that smart controls as of today, complete Fiori elements, or also sections of the templates, all will be such fragment composite controls. And therefore, in this pre-style application, you can add a composite control that is just a smart control. You can add bigger sections of a template, and you can also go towards a complete template. And all these composite controls fragments come along with a metadata definition. What kind of metadata do they require, and what do you have to provide? And with that, it's much clearer, and we are after then to make this step for you easier, and we hope to gain more of you or make more of you moving like we do at SAP to benefit from this metadata approach. So now that's one of the important one, really, really important one today. As said, we talked a lot of, let's say, UI5 evolution and renovation, and the foundation was laid already last year in the third quarter, where we really gave people the complete freedom. Now please look into what the market offers. How would you do it today? And let's say, but please consider in a UI5 style that we do not do it completely different, but we have to do it in a way that we can take all of existing applications with us to a certain extent. That means all applications should benefit, even if they do nothing. And if they do something, they benefit even more. And if they want the really fastest thing, then the effort could be a bit higher. But everybody should, out of the box, have benefit and get it better. So we gave the team the task, please look into what is around. Maybe not take the latest hype topic, but all hype topics that are somehow proven with a proven success record, they are allowed. And then please take an S5 Android device and see what is possible. And that's basically the result after this several weeks. And on the left-hand side, you can see the Cheetah application ready, and right-hand side still loading, ready. So this was the difference that we achieved on live measured Android S5 device with the findings that colleagues had in the Cheetah. And now Cheetah transitioned. We do no longer talk about Cheetah. We talk now it transitioned into UI evolution. We talk now, or especially Frederic will talk now about UI5 evolution in some more details.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, yeah. So we're kind of out of time, so I'll keep it really short. But let's say one of the major findings out of the project was the more code you load, the slower you get. Right? It's not so surprising, but it was. Hands down, that's really what it boils down to, right? So to explain this slide, and please listen to Peter's session afterwards, because he will really go into the details of what we're trying to do. Is in the past, if you have an application, and UI5 is basically, it comes as a black box. It's all in there. When you load libraries, when you load the core, everything that is part of it will be loaded, even though you might not need it. So let's say in really, really simplified terms, what you're looking at right here is some of the concepts that we would like to apply to applications and tools to take a little bit more during runtime to actually compile optimized packages that understand your application and can then serve the application with the lowest amount of code needed to run this completely, right? And this is bottom line, let's say, in really, really short and simple terms, again, referring to Peter, this is what we are trying to achieve here. So I'll leave it at that. Please listen to the other session and give it back to Stefan. Okay.
Now, yeah, again, short, I know, Margaret already is looking at me. Key takeaways. So what is important? You have seen a lot of new features that will come that you already can consume, and we will continue in that way. So we will, let's say, be and remain the best choice for enterprise applications. For the core qualities of the framework, we continue to invest. However, let's say you will not get such many new control features or new controls for the time being. We have already a lot, and maybe even too many. So here, obviously, we have to shift some capacity, but for the core values of UI5, there will be no change, and for the features, we have to step a bit shorter. For doing this focus shift towards then really UI5 evolution, giving you all this flexibility, this modularity of the UI5 evolution, giving you this performance that you have seen, and obviously then the second topping, renovate the smart stack and give you also this real good benefits that we have leveraged at SAP. And as said, really important, and everything optimally supported on or amended for the on-premise customers by the SAP Cloud platform. Good. With that, we really hope you enjoyed the session, and a big thanks of all of you. Frederick and myself will be in the expert corner starting 10:50. Then you have time for questions, as we are already now a lot of time overtime. Thanks a lot for listening, and please enjoy the day like I enjoyed the UI5con in Frankfurt last year.